he's clearly not the sort of person who's going to help Kanye West be sane.
Tenho história pra contar, eu vivi. Dá olhada no.
Now, over the weekend, I went to a Jordan Peterson event here in Sydney. It was his last event of his tour around Australia. Now, there was a left-wing protest at the front, which got a bit heated.
I'm so glad I'm not poisoned with mRNA. My God, I can actually have babies. Nazi piece of shit, fuck off! Sorry.
We did do some interview after the protest on people's thoughts as to if Jordan Peterson should even be allowed to speak in Sydney. That'll be released soon. However, something interesting that I found when I was inside the event was the question put to Jordan Peterson of his thoughts on Kanye West.
He's a man who desperately needs some friends. I mean that dead seriously. Like, he has the temperamental attributes of a creative genius, and that's dangerous. It's dangerous, and that's why we're not all creative geniuses. You don't get that temperament without its inevitable potential catastrophes. So, for example, we know people who are gifted in the literary sense are tilted towards manic depressive disorder. So, because you don't get a benefit in life without getting a risk, you know. And so, West is extremely gifted verbally, and he's got this expansive visionary quality that can tilt into something approximating mania, and that's what I see when I see him. He's being swallowed up by the risks associated with this genius, and part of that, I suspect, is a consequence of isolation. Is that, see, one of the things that happens to people when they get famous is that it's very easy for them to lose access to proper social feedback. You know, so this is partly what drives dictators off the deep end, is that they end up surrounded with sycophants who lie to them all the time. They only tell them what they want to hear, and they don't provide them with any corrective feedback. And so, like, we like to think that we're sane because we're well constituted psychologically, right? That our psyches are well ordered. We're well ordered individuals. That's not why you're sane, to the degree that you're sane, which is probably not all that sane, by the way, but to the degree that you're sane, the reason you're sane is because you're vaguely tolerable to other people. And so there's a bunch of them around you, and they keep telling you how you're stupid and insane. And if you listen, then you don't get too stupid and insane. And so, I really mean that. So, for example, if you're at a party and you're telling a joke and it's not funny, then people won't laugh. And that's an indication to you that your joke is not funny. And you couldn't figure that out, because if you could, you wouldn't have told the joke. But if you're the least bit aware and you get that social feedback, you're going to think, oh, well, people didn't think that was very funny. Maybe I should reconsider my joke, or even what I think is funny. And people are always doing this with you, you know, because they'll attend to you or not. They'll smile at you or not. They'll frown at you or not. They raise their eyebrows, ignore you. Like, we're just in this sea of sociological feedback. And if we're fortunate, we're surrounded by people who are giving us the kind of feedback that keeps us on the straight and narrow. And one of the cataclysmic consequences of fame, potentially, is that you lose all that. And then you think, well, all of you in this audience, you have your own peculiar way that you would go to hell in a handbasket if you allowed yourself to. You know, some of you more introverted types, you might just isolate yourself until you had no one around you at all. And the extroverts, they're more likely to be impulsive party animals, so that's their catastrophe. And the creative people are, well, they're susceptible to mutable identities, so they can destabilize themselves. And the people who aren't creative get locked into a rut and can't transform. And the disagreeable people are so critical and harsh that they can become callous and cruel. And the agreeable people are so forthcoming with other people that they get resentful and bitter and etc., right? We all have our temperament with its accompanying temptations, and we all have a proclivity to blow out on our weakest side. And one of the things we do to fortify ourselves against that is to surround us with people who care about us and then pay attention to them, because they'll just tell you nonstop in 50 different ways, signaling in large part by their facial expression whether or not you're acceptably sane at this moment. And all you have to do is be alert to that, and you can keep yourself regulated. And if you're famous, that can disappear on you. And I think that's, I'm speaking as an outsider, and I don't know the details, but to the degree that I can see what's happening, he's got a grandiosity about him that's associated with kind of a manic energy, and that manic energy can drive creativity. The data on that are quite clear, but you have to have a pretty high opinion of your own creative capacity to put yourself out there in the world, right? To dare to present the thing you created to the world. And you can imagine that binding that property is quite difficult. It's like, well, West is very famous. And so one question that's going to occur to him is something like, I think this occurs to Trump. And I'm not being a cynic about this. It's like, well, how great am I? Right? And the answer can't be not at all, because then you just lock yourself in your room and you'd never come out and you'd never do anything. But the other extreme is, well, I'm the new Messiah. It's like, well, you've probably gone a little too far in the positive direction when you start to entertain those sorts of ideas. But that is a temptation of that manic impulse. It's an impulse towards grandiosity, and that needs to be bounded, and I don't think it's bounded with West. And there's an element of, and I think the paranoid element, which is probably manifesting itself in this anti-Semitism, it's like, if you're famous and the people around you aren't regulating you anymore, and they want something from you, which is very likely to be the case. Imagine you're a tyrant and all you have around you are sycophants, and the only reason they're around you is because they want the benefits of being associated with you because you're powerful, and they'll just say whatever they need to say to keep their affiliation with you. Then you are surrounded by you're surrounded by a conspiratorial, malevolent force all the time. I mean, Solzhenitsyn did a very lovely job of detailing this out in relationship to Stalin. What did Stalin think of people? He thought they were malevolent, contemptible, cowardly liars who deserved exactly what was coming to them. And why did he think that? Well, because almost everyone who he ever had any contact with was exactly like that. So now, it's easy to stand outside that and say, well, Joseph, if you hadn't been such a savage and psychopathic murdering bully, you might have attracted a higher quality of person. But you get the point, right? You can see that a feedback loop starts to establish itself, and beware of that, right? You got to hope that you're fortunate enough in your life that you surround yourself with people who aren't just using you instrumentally, right? They actually care for you, and when you deviate in whatever manner your proclivity takes you, they say, yeah, back in line there, buddy. And you need that. You cannot do that by yourself. We do not, sanity is not the consequence of merely individual integration. We're way too complicated for that. We have to be regulated by a community. We have to be. We're social to that degree. And so people escape from that and spiral, and I think that's what's happening to West. And he has Milo Yiannopoulos and this Nick Fuentes around him, and I've had some interactions with Milo, and I've watched him, and I have some sympathy for Milo because he had some pretty brutal early experiences, but he's clearly not the sort of person who's going to help Kanye West be sane. And Nick Fuentes is even worse. And so, unfortunately now West is in a position where the two people who appear to be close to him are even in more trouble than him. And so that's just not good. And I just see it's a tragedy playing itself out. It's a real tragedy too, because West is a genuine creative genius. And so it's a catastrophe to see that spiral out of control and be devastated, you know? And so it's sad. It's really sad. But that's what's driving it as far as I can tell. So it's very unfortunate. And
well, there you have it. Doesn't seem like Jordan Peterson agrees too much with Kanye West. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll be releasing a video each week, possibly bi-weekly.
Tenho história pra contar, eu vivi. Dá olhada no.
Also, you might have noticed that I was wearing a suit. That's because I just came from court. More on that. We ended up getting a conviction, which we will be appealing. Subscribed. Thank you for watching.